Welcome to Top Talk, where we take critical conversations to the cross of Christ and examine world events through a biblical worldview. I'm your host, Jonathan McFadden. Hey everybody, and welcome to Top Talks. Again, I'm your host, Jonathan McFadden, and today I'm being joined by four young adults who basically grew up at Tabernacle of Praise. Hey y'all, how's it going?
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
All right, so chipper. Today we're going to be talking about success. What does that look like? As you can all tell, we are young, Black, beautiful Black people. And so Black success for us looks very different than it might look for some others. In light of everything that's happened with George Floyd, with people and companies and brands making these very vocal stances against racial injustice, we wanted to take a moment to talk to the people who are in these corporate offices, navigating corporate America day after day, who are subject and privy to all these maybe inside conversations and what's happening actually in the workplace, and how difficult it could be being both Black and a believer in the corporate environment. So before we get started and start jumping into the conversation, I want everybody to introduce themselves, tell us who you are, how old you are, and what you do for a living. We'll start with Joe.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Terry. It's Neal. I'm pushing it a bit on the young adult thing. I'm 28. I am an attorney, a young attorney. I just got licensed in South Carolina back in November, and I will be licensed in North Carolina in the coming months.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Somebody else take it away. Tierra, you go.
All right. My name is Tierra Howell. I am 25 years old. I am a marketing and public relations professional. That pretty much sums me up in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you. Yesuto.
Everybody, my name is Alfred Jackson. 25 years old. I work with early stage technology startups.
All right. Thank you, Alfred. Ebony.
My name is Ebony Stowe. Well, hello, everyone, to begin. My name is Ebony Stowe, and I'm 25 years old. I work for a local Department of Social Services, and I work in economic services. So I assist with cash assistance programs, food and nutrition, and Medicaid programs.
All right. And I'm the senior of the crowd. I'm pushing 30, Jonathan McFadden, and I am a senior content strategist for a financial services company. So all of us are in our 20s still, and we are all in some kind of facet of corporate America in different industries, different sectors. You have law, you have marketing and PR, you have marketing and PR advertising. You have startups, entrepreneurship, business, and then you have social services. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about initially to get this going, to get this started, is, being in corporate America or being in the workplace in general can oftentimes feel like a rat race where you have to kind of balance your ambition and your goals with who you are as a person. You might find yourself in situations where you may be tempted to compromise or to maybe put aside some of your beliefs or values in order to succeed and to climb. Have any of you ever experienced that? And if you have, tell me how you navigated that. How did you deal with that? How did you reconcile with that? And anybody can start.
I'll go ahead and tackle this one. So, I think it's, trying to, especially when you're within the first 4 to 5 years of like your professional career, it's like this constant state of, are you staying ahead? Are you putting yourself in a place where you can support yourself when you have to take care of people in your 30s. So like the 20s is kind of like the stress test of like, am I doing everything right to get what I'm like, to get where I need to be going and making sure I'm making the right decisions. And with that, sometimes you can find yourself in a place, or at least for me personally, is you start looking at other people and what they're doing at your age. And you have to understand that like there's a lot of circumstances that goes behind that person being where they are at their age. Maybe they've been studying whatever field they're in for the last, 17 years. Maybe in high school, they were taking internships and interested in things that they're doing now. You have to kind of understand that. But then also you have to appreciate where you are. Because if you don't appreciate where you are, you're always going to be in this constant state of, just being, I won't say depressed, but not being satisfied or not being content with the situation, not enjoying it. So pretty much what I've had to do when I get into that state of like being anxious about, maybe not being in the right situation or not moving as quickly as I need to move. And then the situation comes up where like this dangling thing of, oh, well, you can do this to kind of get where you need to go on a fast track. It's just taking the time to step back and breathe and reassess, like, for 25, I'm doing just fine and I'm doing okay. And I'm, doing exactly what I want to do. So just taking that time to reflect and remind yourself that you're blessed and remind yourself that you can't really look at what anybody else is doing because that's their life and you got to take care of your own. So that's kind of been my experience and my perspective.
Good. Anybody else?
I can elaborate on that. Same deal for the most part. What Yesito said about kind of understanding your own process. I kind of established this quote for myself, which was trust the process, trust yourself, and trust God. Just simply because everyone's walk is completely different. And when you're in these different areas, you do feel pressured to say, for instance, I've been to college for 4 years. I should have this and I should have that. And, for me, the specific industry that I try to focus on, a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers are also in that industry. So it was tough, seeing this happened for this person or this happened for this person and not understanding, like, regardless of what position I'm in, whether I like it or not, why is it not happening for me at this moment? So there was a constant battle. You just really have to, like I said, trust your own process and trust yourself. Everything really does happen in due timing, but it's not easy. It is definitely not easy to comprehend when you're in that moment. So I believe in, just really focusing on yourself and really focusing on exactly what you have to do to get to your own next level.
That's good.
Yes, I'll chime in. Jonathan, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do think a part of your question was being faced with a situation that maybe goes against your beliefs and you have to sacrifice something for yourself. I'll say for me, I haven't experienced that, but it's something a question that I get often as an attorney. People ask, do you do criminal law? And then they'll talk, how could you defend, especially when I was in law school, how could you defend a person that does this or that? Or, if someone commits a heinous crime, pointing at other attorneys, how could an attorney represent that person? And I used to have those same questions, especially before I went into law school. But after talking to attorneys, it's not about defending, a crime that somebody committed. It's about defending that person's rights. It's about, making sure that person has a right to a fair trial. It's about making sure that person has competent counsel, making sure that their rights are not being infringed upon. Because if you allow someone else's rights to be infringed upon, it could certainly happen to you. But because I knew that certain things may bother me as an attorney, maybe, if someone did commit a heinous crime or maybe if there was this, insurance company that didn't want to provide coverage for someone that was, tragically injured in an accident and they should have been covered. Some things you can be proactive about when you're going into a particular industry. And I would encourage anybody, if you have a goal in mind and I want to participate in this particular profession, if you know that there are things that may challenge your character, then maybe you think twice about that profession, or maybe work within a different area of that profession. So although I do civil litigation, I don't have to, at least thus far in my career, I haven't been faced with something. If I take this case, it may have a big payout, but it may cost me, part of my soul. So I would encourage everyone to be proactive, do the research, research companies, go on Glassdoor, look up reviews and you can kind of figure out, what will I be doing in this particular job? And, does this job and the duties that I'm going to be performing, do they line up with my character and who it is that I want to be?
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I can it's not really the same because I wasn't a lawyer, but when my first job out of college was as a newspaper reporter covering crime and public safety. And so I oftentimes interacted with lawyers and suspects and cops and all these types of people in the criminal justice system. And there were definitely moments where I had to cover things or write about things that personally felt kind of contrarian to who I was. But at the same time, I also found myself believing in things or believing that everybody kind of deserved their side of the story to be told in the paper. Whereas most people are like, well, why would you do that? That person was killed, at a party, for instance. And so they're just a bunch of thugs anyway, particularly about young Black people. Anytime I wrote about young Black victims of crime or Black suspects of crime, and I would try to go the extra mile to write about them a little more, with a little more complexity to show people that, hey, they're not just what they did, or they're not just a crime victim. I'd oftentimes get flack from the public, particularly white people, who would, say like, why, these are a bunch of N-words, or like I said earlier, thugs, and why are you bothering with this? Why are you trying to be, excusatory of their actions and all those kind of things? And it wasn't that I was trying to excuse anything that anybody had done, but what I was trying to do was show people that, there's a lot more complexity and there are a lot more reasons for crime than just I'm a bad person. It usually has little to do with that. There's an entire there's an entire history that usually puts people in these kind of situations, or they just were in the wrong place at the wrong time, which does happen. Just, and that's sometimes the difficult situations we're put in, especially as young people, because there I was 21 years old and I'm dealing with cops, and I'm dealing with suspects, and I'm dealing with all these people in this kind of really, complex and sometimes dangerous world, and getting tugged and pulled in these different directions, trying to follow or do what I thought was the right thing. And so sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you have to really look into yourself and decide, okay, am I going to do the right thing because it's the right thing, or am I going to do something else because it's easier and because that's what people expect of me? And so I may not encounter those situations nearly as frequently or nearly as emotionally as I used to, but they're still there, and that still happens in life. That happens as you're growing up. You're always going to be in those kind of situations. So yeah, good stuff. Ebony, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on that if you had anything, or we can just keep going, whichever you prefer.
Well, I actually do have something I'd like to add. So right now I work in economic services, and so typically when people hear about the Department of Social Services, the first thing that their minds go to are, oh, you're all the people that take kids away. Like, that's just the automatic go-to, when there is so much more to the Department of Social Services, just as far as what they do for the public and assisting people who need help. And so right now, although I do not work with youth and family services, it's eventually something that I would like to do, and that I have a desire for, not necessarily with removing children from homes, but something of that sort. If it's adoption or whatever the case may be, I do have a desire for that. And so I realized that at some point, although I've never faced it before, that sometimes I may have a dilemma where children are being placed back into homes where they shouldn't necessarily be going back to. And that's actually not a foreign concept with the Department of Social Services, unfortunately. So just kind of realizing what I will be walking into, and just knowing that that may be a risk that may come into play, that may be something that I may experience when that time comes. So I have not experienced it, to this day, but just realizing that in different positions that may look different for me in the world of social work.
Yeah, and I think kind of put a bow on all of that, I think something that we all touched on is knowing who you are a little bit, and remembering who you are, and ultimately whose you are. As believers, we do have a different type of calling in this life, and we don't shed those things off. We don't shed those values in the workplace, although it may look different. It may look different for everybody depending on what you're doing. I don't know about y'all, but I can't go in my job passing out tracts. That's probably a no can do. But there are ways we could still be who we are. And when we're encountering these situations, rely on God and rely on the guidance of the Holy Spirit to help us figure out what the heck we should do. I want to kind of move on from there, though, and kind of just ask, has being Black ever been a thing in your career? And when I say a thing, has it been something that has either defined your career journey, your vocational journey? Has it been something that you think about often? Have you faced any kind of discrimination? Have you faced those kind of microaggressions in the workplace? What has it been like for you being Black and young in the industry in which you work? And anybody, go for it.
I'll be happy to begin. 100% on all points. You all may not know, but I am no longer at Porsche. And so while I was there, when I first began, this was back in 2017, July 2017. I started out on a team full of white men. And I would literally, I'd say like 3 months in, I would go home and literally cry almost every single day because of not feeling welcome and no matter how many people speak to you in the morning or no matter, how many hands you shake, it was just the weirdest thing feeling like the only Black woman in that entire department. So I would see little things like, I'm a question asker. I'm very inquisitive. I always ask questions. I love to learn. And I like to learn more about my job in order to excel. And I would notice that there were things kind of kept from me. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. You won't ever have to, deal with it. And I'm like, so why wouldn't I have to deal with it? If it's in my department, if it's with, my team, why would I not have to deal with it? So anyway, I just kind of dismissed it, kind of moved past it and excelled in different areas. I was, advanced in different positions there. And my last one showed me everything that I needed to know about, what was going on. Just people are very intimidated when people like us, I guess, come on the scene or, you're on your job, you're always doing what you're supposed to do. You're very friendly. Everything, you kind of dot all your I's and cross all your T's. They did not like it at all. And it's kind of hard to navigate being Black in corporate America, especially young and Black in corporate America, because for one, that was my first position or my first experience outside of college. Two, I'm a very bubbly person. I'm a very, I talk to everybody, I'm very, I just didn't understand. And I always try to see the good in everything. So it's kind of difficult when you have to look at the real world in front of you and just kind of feel like, okay, do I have to change as a person? Do I have to, there's so many questions that kind of come up in your head. And it can cause a lot of different feelings. I'm not going to say exactly, it might not be depression or it might not be anything, on the more extreme end of the spectrum. However, your mental stability is challenged. You start questioning what you're able to do, all of those kinds of things. So it's time. I think that there's a time for everything to kind of have an ending. It may not be a happy ending, but I've felt more free now than I ever have. So I think that just establishing that and understanding who I am as a person and who I am in the workplace was really a huge deal in that whole space. So yeah. Being Black in America and being Black in corporate America is very tough. And that's just bottom line. Just learning who you are. But as long as you know that, nobody can really touch you.
Right. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I will add my 2 cents into it. So, being Black in the workplace is something that's you always kind of know it, especially so for me, I'm the only Black person on my team. From my core team to our board of directors, I'm the only Black person within the whole organization. And that's something you immediately see when you're interviewing for the job. You look at the team, you look at the board, like, oh, this is probably one of those experiences. For the most part, you kind of just, you try not to think about it too much because you're always thinking about, oh, I'm the only Black person here. It's like you're not really in the right space to deal with different people, from different backgrounds. And you're always concerned about, what do people think about my background in this? But I will say there have been a couple situations that have come up over the last, I'll probably say a year that were interesting. Like about a year into my current job, there was a panel discussion in like one of our local startup community centers. And the conversation was about the minority founder, the minority entrepreneur experience within St. Louis. And somehow, some way, my boss found saw the questions before the panel started, and she called me like 5 minutes before it started, and she was worried that I wasn't going to be able to articulate those my thoughts and feelings in a correct manner. And I had to remind her, like, one, I gave her every single thing I was going to say. And she's like, oh, wow, like, that's great. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm Black, so I know how to talk about these things. This is a lived experience. But, it's kind of like that reminder of like, oh, they're worried that, I could potentially say something off the wall, like kind of talked about the Nick Cannon situation earlier, right? It's like, this is going to be like, is Alfred going to say something, off base, or maybe something that offends the board or maybe some donors. And that was kind of the moment where I realized, oh, like, yes, I am in a professional sense treated like everybody else, but there's like this one bit where if we get on this subject, there's this discomfort around what the one Black person might say, like in this sense. And that's when it kind of came like, oh, wow, this is the place I live in. It kind of, it was kind of shine a little bit. And then fast forward into the Ahmaud Arbery situation, the George Floyd situation, and then you tie that in with working from home. The feeling of isolation you get when you don't have anybody that you work with that can really empathize with that. You got to go to work in the morning. You got to, like, smile in front of your coworkers' faces, and they're like, talking about how crazy this stuff is on the news, and your perception of it is completely different. And like the things you have in your mind is like, there's nobody there that can really understand where you're coming from. But the good thing about hopefully working with good people, right, is that you do have team members that do say, hey, I don't understand your experience, but I want to let you know that, like, I want to hear about, like, how do you feel about it? And I will say, like, when you're the only Black person, but you do have a team member that plays that role, it's really just good to have. And you cherish those people, and you build genuine relationships with those people because you can tell they actually care about you. So yeah, hopefully I answered the question in a good way, but that is, but yeah, like that's something that's always just going to be a situation, especially the higher you go or whatever and whatever you do, pretty much, you're probably going to be one or maybe one of two or maybe one of three Black folks, and whatever you do, the higher you go. So it's just a reality of life, and our jobs is just to make sure that, when our next generation comes, that, hopefully we can have some good experiences and good perspective to give them, and it's more of them. So.
I certainly echo your sentiments there. Hopefully with the next generation, there are more of us in these professional settings. I would just as an attorney in South Carolina, I believe as far as density, South Carolina has one of the higher concentrations of Black people, of African Americans in the country. I think we're north of 30% as far as the population goes. And we're underrepresented, in the legal profession, as we are in most professions. I believe for attorneys in South Carolina, I believe it's a number somewhere between 5 and 10%. So in law school, I worked at 3 law firms, and I've been at one law firm since I graduated. And at every law firm that I have worked at, I have been, the one Black person there. Now at my current firm, we do have what we call a runner, a young Black man. He's actually about to go to law school, but I'm the only Black attorney there. And once this young man is gone, I'll be the only Black employee there. And I don't struggle with this as much now because as Alfred said, I mean, you get used to it. Even being in school, I went to a PWI, so a lot of places there just aren't a lot of us. The higher up in education you go, but there is certainly a struggle with just, cultural differences, things. I mean, I can think of a few times where just because of cultural differences, you may say something that's taken the wrong way. And I think, we all talk about code switching. And, before you go into the job, your parents give you a call and tell you, make sure you're doing this, and you're doing that. And, make sure, you don't get yourself in trouble. As Alfred said, with, especially when someone passes away, via police brutality or what have you. I remember a time before I went to law school working in a corporate environment, and I was frustrated. It was when Philando Castile was killed in Minneapolis. And I remember as I was on my way to work, my father gave me a call and he told me, son, you posted some things on Facebook and I know you're upset, but don't go to work and argue with people and lose your job. And, that's something that we are faced with. So many things that we internalize and we, a lot of times have to go into our work settings and not speak on it or act like nothing has happened. Fortunately, I think since George Floyd's passing, I think there's more awareness, and I think we do have a vehicle now to speak out more because America as a whole, I think wants to hear what we have to say now more than ever, and I'm thankful for that.
That's good.
So I think that my experience is just a little bit different from everyone else's. I did go to a PWI, and so at post-graduation, I did work in another corporate job where I was the only African-American. I felt uncomfortable just based on that alone. Not that I didn't know how to operate, but it just seemed as if if I was able to, because I excelled and because I did my job so well, it was almost unexpected of me. Like, wow, you can, you really caught on to this fast, or wow, it was almost as if, that was above me to be able to grasp my job and actually do it well. So I transitioned on to my current job where we are the majority. I would say it was specifically Black women and Hispanic women are the majority. And that mainly has to do with the population that we service. It has a lot to do with that. The problem that I have is, or that I see is, upper management typically are white men and women. So, it's almost as if we are trusted with the bottom of the barrel jobs, but we're not trusted to manage our own people. And so when George Floyd passed away, although we received emails from our county manager and we were encouraged to, reach out to our EAP, we didn't have direct communication from the people who send us emails every day about, you need to update this or you need to call this client back. I mean, the people who literally every day oversee all of our operations had nothing to say. And I think that was harmful for me because, of course, it means something to come from upper management, but I've never met our county manager. I know her name. I know what she looks like. I could pick her out in a crowd, but I don't know her personally. I don't talk to her every day. So that in itself was harmful. And then my direct supervisor said something, and I know that he was not intentionally, his intention was not to offend anyone. But it was he made a very insensitive comment. And so I made it plain to him, I sent him a very polite email. I'm sure that this was not your intention. However, This offended us. This offended me, and I know I wasn't the only person that was offended, but I felt like I needed to speak up on behalf of everyone else, just so that it's understood. Listen, these are the people that you oversee daily, and you need to know what makes us tick. You need to know what emotionally harms us, because it's just, it's so important to know the people that it's important to know the people that you're working with on a daily basis. It's important to know what makes them upset. It's important to know how what you say affects them. So I had no problem with saying, hey, you could have worded that differently, or you could have said that differently, or whatever. And it wasn't, he was definitely receptive to what I was saying, or appeared to be anyway. But I just hope that he can, apply these principles moving forward, and just knowing, hey, maybe I shouldn't say it that way, or maybe I shouldn't say it at all. It's okay to not say anything if you don't have. Listen, our mothers taught us, if you don't have anything nice to say, keep your mouth shut. I would rather you be quiet than you run your mouth about really nothing. You're not saying anything, but you're hurting people who have to continue to deal with you. So
that's really good, Ebony. I feel like you've dovetailed into two things I want us to tackle. One, speaking up in the workplace as a Black person, as a Black employee, as a Black professional, speaking up when things like that happen, when microaggressions or macroaggressions happen. And then two, what conversations were like at your workplaces after George Floyd, because Joe is right. People are willing to talk and understand more now than they ever have been before. They want to hear our voices in really in an unprecedented way. So, we should definitely take the opportunity, I think, but also we are still at work. So let's start with the first one. Have any of you ever been in a situation like Ebony where you've had the opportunity to speak up and address something that's happened that didn't sit well with you or didn't sit well with anybody else, that was potentially offensive?
Oh, I'll start this one off. So I've had it go both ways for me. This was around Christmas time, the holiday season last year. There was some decorations at the front of our office that I thought were interesting. And what it was a cotton wreath. So just, a Christmas wreath, but it had cotton all over it. And, I looked at it and I said, a cotton wreath. I was like, this is the epitome of South Carolina. Like, this is the most southern thing I've eventually the cotton wreath was taken down. And I don't think that was, there was no malice behind that. I think, or any ill will. But I thought to myself, as a Black person, when I saw the cotton wreath, my initial reaction was like, why is there a cotton wreath on the door? And my initial thought was, what will a client think? If a Black client is coming through the office, are they going to think the same thing that I thought? Will they be turned away or put off by the cotton wreath? And ultimately, that's why I decided to speak up and say something. Now, on the flip side, recently, this was after George Floyd's passing. I was making my way through the office and overheard a conversation, but only a piece of it. And the only thing I heard was, I don't think this will solve the problem of racism in America. And my initial thought was, I want to chime in. Like, I want to figure out what's going on here. I spoke to somebody about it, and they asked me a few questions, and I started to realize just how much I didn't know about whatever they were talking about. Right? They could have been talking about protests, which I would have wanted to chime in on that. They could have been talking about riots. They could have been talking about taken down Confederate statue. Like, they could have been talking about anything, but I didn't have enough information to really go attack the situation the way I wanted to emotionally, and also, recognizing myself that, the people that were saying this, these employees, I don't really speak to them that much. I don't have much of a rapport with them. So how am I going to be able to approach this situation, in a meaningful manner? How can I approach the situation in a meaningful manner? How can we, talk about this and potentially, I potentially educate somebody, right? That's what we all, strive to do. We don't want to pick fights. But ultimately, I decided not to say anything because, one, I thought about it for a few days and I was like, it was so long ago now. I don't want to speak on it. But also, again, because I didn't know what they were talking about, it wasn't a microaggression directed at me. And like I said, because I just didn't have sufficient information to me to approach them about it. So two things that I faced. In one situation, I decided to say something, and in the other, I decided not to.
I'll just quickly talk about some situations I've had in my jobs. In the company I worked at before my current company, I had a situation where definitely spoke up and it did not go well. And I had a situation at my current company in which I spoke up and it went very, very well. And so I've experienced kind of both sides of the coin. I'll talk about I'll give you the abbreviated version because it's a really long story for both companies. But essentially, at my current company for a year, I've been part of building the framework for a diversity and inclusion program that we kind of had to immediately deploy after George Floyd died. We were working on it. George Floyd happened and we were like, we can't wait anymore. And so we did, and that's been great. We've had Zoom discussion groups with employees reacting to George Floyd's death. We've had conversations with HR talking about affecting institutional change and the way we hire and retain and promote employees of color and promote women, because we saw that there are gaps. We saw the disparities. We've been examining those things. We've been talking about ways to change them. So that's been a great experience. Like, we have a Slack channel where employees are dumping resources. People are talking about race with empathy and nuance. And it's been wonderful. We have cultural celebrations. It's been great. At the company I worked at before, it blew up into a big mess that eventually involved our legal department. And it was a 2-month-long battle that basically just blew up. They put the whole kibosh on the whole thing. No diversity and inclusion program was launched. My job was passively aggressively threatened. And so it was a mess. But it was that situation where things happened, microaggressions happened and macroaggressions happened in both places. And in both situations, I'm like, oh, we can't just sit back and do nothing. Something has to change. But a lot of times it depends on the environment, the corporate environment you're in. The one I'm in now is very encouraging and has been very supportive. The one I was in before was very threatened, was very defensive. And so, I was really reluctant at my current company to do anything or say anything because I'm like, I just had this experience and I'm like, I'm not trying to be in that situation again. But, it's like a fire shut in my bones. I have to say something. I can't just let it go. That's just not who I am. And so I said it and it's gone great, but that's not always the experience. And I've run into a lot of other colleagues who've had those kind of experiences where they've spoken up about something and it's just gone really badly for them. I've heard stories of my women colleagues whose hair has been touched by men who have started to pet them like they're animals. I had a colleague of mine at my current company who told my manager upon discovering that I was taking a mission trip to Africa, was like, oh my gosh, is everything okay at home? As if Africa was my home. And so it's those little things that happen that start to add up. And you had one person who called another Black employee a thought, not knowing what that really means. Yes. And so, of course, the person who was on the receiving end of that was ready to fight, but was like, I can't because that's my job. So, you know, all those kind of things are happening. And so you have to always, it's like you're always trying to weigh the risk. It's a risk analysis, a risk cost analysis. Like, okay, so if I do this, how's this going to come and affect me detrimentally? And it sucks that we have to do that. It shouldn't be that way. But it's like that for a lot of Black employees in corporate America.
I can say being a Black woman in America, like you said, is very difficult. The microaggressions are actually ridiculous. There have been countless times where, you know, for one, I like to change my hair sometimes, and that's just how women do. I mean, we like to do different things. And so many comments have been shared that are, oh, how do you do that? You know, just weird comments, braids this day. Oh, why do you change your hair next week? Or why do you do this, that, and the third? And my thing is like, we do not question any other race. We do not question anything about anything that they do. And it seems as if the moment that you walk into the workspace, all eyes are on you, number one. So you have to be, you know, dressed professionally, like from head to toe. Everything has to be tip-top shape. Your hair has to be one way or the other way. It has to be straight, or, you know, just so many different microaggressions have been shared. And I mean, from top level, C-level executives, not just people on my level. So just trying to navigate that space and figure out, like, why are people asking me these things? And, you know, me coming from an HBCU, I'm proud of who I am. There were so many times, I mean, conversations that I heard. I'm a very vocal person. I would want to speak up. It's a matter of trying to be tactful and make sure, I think Joe said that about saying the right thing, figuring out, you know, picking and choosing your battles. And it's like, why do I have to pick and choose my battles? This is a space where I feel like everyone should be open and feel like we should have open conversation, but I just do not feel as if everyone is going to understand me. I know this was the day that I left, I believe. We had HBCU Day. It was during February. So they do a huge Black History celebration, all of that. So everyone HBCU was invited to wear their paraphernalia, to, you know, just to wear, you know, of course I come with my Spelman gear on, happy as ever, you know, we taking pictures downstairs, all of that. And I overhear members on my team, which are managers, why are they having HBCU Day? We don't have this day for such and such. Why do HBCUs exist? And at that moment, you know, you're so furious to the point where, let me just simmer down. Let me not even say anything at this moment. And it's sad that it gets to that point because you want to say something each and every time. I get defensive. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I get extremely defensive. And I don't want to be, but I do want to have have an educated response, have a response that I feel like someone is going to be receptive enough to understand, hey, that's not okay to say, or hey, that was extremely offensive to me and a whole other group of people. So it's, you know, I'm still trying to figure that out, you know, how to be tactful in my response and not to get so defensive and not be, you know, because I'm ready to go at sometimes. Like, I'm like, you just came for me. You can't say that. Like, that's who I am. So it's difficult getting to that point, but, you know, just being able to have people around me that are also Black, be straightforward. And we have those conversations in the workplace and just kind of figure it out together. You know, some things you do have to just say, hey, kick it to the side, they'll figure it out some other day. And stuff you can address head on. So it's definitely an experience. I will say that.
We have a Black support group at my job. We, outside of the diversity and inclusion stuff, the Black employees in corporate, we have this thing called Mahogany Meetup. And we just, you know, before COVID, we would just get together once a month for lunch and we would just vent and talk. And we have our little channel, our Slack channel on the side where we just talk to each other. And it's wonderful. If I didn't have that, you know, that outlet, I think it would be much harder because at other jobs, I did not. You know, Joe, you mentioned Philando Castile. I remember working at the company I was at before when Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, and then those Dallas officers happened. Nobody said anything about Alton Sterling. Nobody said anything about Philando Castile. Those Dallas cops get shot. Then everybody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I'm so heartbroken. This is terrible. And I agree, it is terrible, but it was terrible a couple of days ago too when Philando Castile got shot. It was terrible a couple of days ago when Alton Sterling got shot, but you didn't care enough to be as expressive as you are now. And that means something to us. You know, we see that. And that to us, that at least to me, sends a message that Black lives did not matter to you. They may matter now because everybody suddenly thinks they matter, because we were forced to confront the ugliness of systemic racism because you saw a man die on camera, which is a shame. It took that for you to actually understand. But yeah, you were saying, you were sending the message, this little, subliminal message to me that we don't care unless it's somebody we care about, somebody who we can identify with, somebody who we relate to. Meanwhile, everything happened in the Black community. Well, that's, that sucks, and we're just not going to talk about it because it makes us too uncomfortable to talk about. So anyway, Ebony and Yesuto, you didn't get a chance to talk in a while. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to your point, I find it very strange that even in situations like you were just discussing about how just a common man passes away at the hands of police brutality, and others cannot relate to it some way. They can't relate to a Black man being shot senselessly, but they can somehow relate to a police officer who chose that as his profession, who decided that was what he wanted to do for himself. Now, definitely don't take me wrong when I say this, because I definitely do believe that it is definitely a sad thing when someone passes away, regardless of their profession. However, it's crazy to me that you can sympathize more, you understand more for a police officer who is killed in the line of duty, which is what he or she signed up for and wanted to do, but you can't relate to a man who's just riding in his car with a child in the back seat and his girlfriend in the passenger side, and he does everything the way that he should do, and you can't relate to him. You can't relate to the life that's lost, and you then say things like, "I don't see color." But the only thing that makes the difference is color in that situation. It's the only thing that truly sets the boundary. So I try my best to not be or become discouraged. Now I'm in a more diverse workplace, so that's definitely helpful for me. We don't necessarily have support groups, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, Jonathan. And I wish that more companies would take that on. But I definitely do believe that we have to do a better job of supporting one another, and just saying, like, hey, let's vent about this because this is the only way that I'm going to make it through this 8 hours today. Especially, I've never experienced such a lack of motivation to work until George Floyd passed away. And I'm even working from home, and it was still like, I do not want to get up. I do not want to work. I do not want to continue to labor for an organization that has not cared enough about me and how I feel in this situation to say, hey, do you need a day? Do you need some time to just, dial back? Do you need, an hour? I heard of some companies that literally gave employees a half day. It's a scheduled half day, but it's just, hey, go home, process your feelings with this, and come back tomorrow and have a better day. Or we hope that helps you come back tomorrow and have a better day. I think that in itself would definitely be helpful, but that's where we also have to come in. We also have to come in. We have to be supportive of one another, and also saying, we are the only people that can look out for ourselves. So I'm going to help you, and you're going to help me as we look out for our people. I do think that we have to do a better job as far as that's concerned.
What were conversations like at your jobs after George Floyd? Were there any? What was it like for you at work?
So some of the older women on my team specifically, I do vividly remember one lady, she literally cried because she was like, I'm so concerned for my child. She has an adult son, but she's like, I'm just concerned for him. I'm concerned for his well-being. I'm genuinely worried that something may happen to him. And I think that is the burden that a lot of our people carry. I think that for my Hispanic colleagues, I think that they just don't really know what to say. I mean, they're also in a position where they're disadvantaged as well, and their people are disadvantaged as well. And so sometimes also trying to be supportive of them is important as well. But I think that for my African American colleagues specifically, there was a lot of you could just tell there was an emotional shift. There was in our team huddle, there are usually a lot of things that people have to say, but I mean, that particular week it was silent. I mean, we didn't have words to say. We didn't, I definitely felt numb. I mean, and I think that that's kind of what led to the silence amongst our people as well, and not wanting to say the wrong thing as well, which is also a valid concern. But yeah, I think numbness and being concerned and also trying to remove your emotions from the job that you have to do every day. That's a difficult task to take on too. But just kind of saying, okay, I have to get myself together so that I can, get through this 8 hours today. I think that was a lot of our experience as well.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that the first day after the video came out that was a really rough morning. I remember I was me and my dad were doing our devotional, and I was telling him how I was like extremely like I think everybody struggles with their faith. I think that morning I really struggled with like my faith that morning, just like around the idea that I had to forgive. Technically, I had to forgive that man, especially if he wasn't a Christian before. Let's say through whatever conversations that he has, that he could eventually become a Christian, and then I have to forgive that man for what he did, and then because we all believe that there is a second home after this one, then he should be welcomed into the afterlife, into heaven. Like I had like a real struggle dealing with that, and my dad and I had like a really good conversation around it. But then after that, still extremely angry, just hurt, and then found out that because my mom was in Minneapolis for many years, found out that community was where my cousins live in Minneapolis, and but then also I have another cousin who was high up in the police force. Like it's just a lot of like weird things just like going through. And then I hop on the team call, and then one of my teammates was like, asked my other teammate about his dad, because his dad lived in the suburbs 3 miles out of the city. And she was like, "How's your dad doing?" And like, I was like, "Wait, what? This is how we're starting the day, right? Cool." And I just and then they had like a whole 10-minute conversation around, "Oh, my dad's doing okay. It's crazy. Target's burned down." And like, I just remember I turned off my video, I muted myself, and I walked off. Like I walked off, cooled down, because I was extremely like, just like these, like, this is the energy you're going to start the day with, and you have one Black coworker, and this is what we're bringing to the table as a start today. And thankfully, I think it was realized that Alfred was no longer part of the conversation. And they were like, "Oh, how are you doing, Alfred?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I have family in that community. Like, like that's like it hit close to home for that, and also just like already this emotional roller coaster, the Ahmaud Arbery situation, the Breonna Taylor situation, and it was like all the other things that have happened over the last seemingly 5-6 years, where it's like consistently every month, it's like you see somebody that looks like you just getting killed. Like, you know, it's just a constant, like, you know, you get burnt out about it. And thankfully after that, my boss, she followed up with me and she was like, just like a really awesome conversation. And it wasn't like she was asking me a whole lot of questions. She just shut up and let me talk for like, a good, 30, 45 minutes. And I just really appreciated it. And it was not the, oh, I understand. It was just like, it was pleasant that like nobody tried to say, I understand where you're coming from. It was just coming from a place of listening, how I felt about it, and letting me get that energy off. And I appreciated it. So, after that, thankfully we've worked on some really interesting things around diversity and inclusion, and, improving certain things within the organization. And, in times like this, you get aggravated that it takes certain situations like this to push the needle on certain topics. But I do think, and I think we all kind of play this, can play this role if you're a Black person in a professional setting. When these situations do come up, it does provide a very good opportunity to lead certain conversations and push people in ways that they may not have been comfortable being pushed just a week before that. And I will say like if there was one good thing that has come out of this, is that I think the people that I work with, and I think our board, I think a lot of people that I work with, conversations and people have been pushed in places that they may not have been pushed before now. And it's good to see because like when you work with corporate people, they're supposed to be smart people, and these people are supposed to be intelligent. So like you should be able to be pushed and be able to have intelligent dialogue about things that are uncomfortable. And I will say the good thing that's come out of this is that these quote unquote intelligent people are now being pushed to be intelligent about something new. And that's been really awesome to see. So.
Tierra, Joe, what about you guys?
Well, being that I am not in the corporate setting right now, I haven't necessarily had conversations with coworkers. However, at the moment, I've kind of project managed a team and had to deal with someone that brought up the George Floyd situation. Things like that kind of make me uncomfortable because, like I said, I get really emotional right now and I have to figure out exactly how I feel in order to address the situation or the conversation. I do understand that these uncomfortable conversations have to happen, but sometimes when certain comments are said, it's kind of difficult for me to put together an answer that I think that they would understand where I'm coming from. This was an individual, a white male from up north that kind of tried to justify the situation. This wasn't, and to me, there's no justification whatsoever. At that moment, I began to think of not only, when I was in Florida and the Trayvon Martin verdict, was everything just kind of blew up, basically. The past 400 plus years blew up for me, if we're being honest. So these conversations right now, I think I'm still trying to work on, trying to figure out exactly how to address them. I have not gotten to that place yet. I would like to get there, but I'm just a very emotional person when it comes to the topic. And I try to understand it for myself, which there may not be much understanding surrounding it. It's just straightforward. This person was Black, this happened because they were Black. And yeah, I just haven't figured it out yet. To be completely honest, I have not figured it out yet.
And that's okay. You're being honest with yourself. So thank you. It's a journey. It's a journey. I'm not fully there myself. I've had some struggles too. Joe, what about you?
Yes, I have had conversations, with coworkers about, the George Floyd situation and everything that's disseminated from it, the protests, the riots, people that are supportive, people that are not supportive. So I would say for me, the conversations that I've had have been meaningful. But I've had those conversations with individuals, though. Like there hasn't necessarily been. And part of it, I think, we haven't been doing gatherings, at my office. Again, everyone kind of stays in their own office, and we get our work done and we go home because of COVID. So there has not been, an institutional conversation, of the entire firm, but there have been talks amongst individuals, which I think is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's each one teach one. It's incremental in nature a lot of the times. I told you guys a little bit earlier about what's been happening at my office. Well, my job, I'm not in the office, but so yeah, those conversations have been great. I've helped facilitate some of them. I've talked about George Floyd a lot. But I will say the Wednesday after he died, which is the day after the video was widely circulated, was a really difficult day for me as well. I was heavy. I was just really, really heavy. It was hard, like Ebony was talking about, finding that motivation. I had a hard time finding that motivation, having to be on meetings and smile through the pain, which is what we're accustomed to doing, shoving down that trauma. Even though on the inside I was screaming and wanted to rage, I kind of kept it, professional like that. We're used to doing that. It's survival. It's how we survive. And so, yeah, I think that was the first day since we started working from home that I actually took a nap on my lunch break, which I never do. I was just so tired. I was out of it. Like my sleep cycle was fine at that point, but I think it was just the emotional toll of, again, seeing another Black man killed by the police. And people, I think people struggle to understand why it affects us the way it does. I think a lot of people are like, well, you didn't know him or he wasn't related to you. That doesn't matter. When you have to understand the systemic history behind all this. We're accustomed to seeing people who look like us and to being killed and dealing with the fact that we are endangered in this country, that living while Black is different. It's just different. And it puts us it could easily put us in the crosshairs of somebody who's out for our blood. And so, it's just a reminder of that. Plus you had Amy Cooper, that whole situation in Central Park happened at the same time. Then you have a pandemic that disproportionately kills us. So you have all that. That's a lot. I was going through some emotional whiplash because it was constantly like bam, bam, bam. It's constant. And it doesn't seem to relent. Yesito, you tapped into something that I really like to talk about, though, being both a Black person and a believer. And sometimes there can be tension. And I'm not talking about being Black nationalist or Pan-Africanist or, nationalist, nothing like that. But what I'm saying is, though, as believers, we ascribe to a value system that is very countercultural, that, Jesus tells us to forgive as we've been forgiven. We're to show grace and we're to, apportion mercy to people who do wrong to us, love our enemies. And so, but then at the same time, it feels like a war is being waged against Black bodies in this country. And we get angry, and it's okay to be angry. You should be angry because it's sin, it's wrong. But how do you all manage that as believers, as young believers who are dealing with all of this trauma, all this generational trauma that is just perpetuated from generation to generation? You're dealing with that. You're dealing with the latest Black person being killed by law enforcement. You're dealing with the pandemic. At the same time, you are a blood-bought, baptized, Holy Ghost filled, speaking in tongues, praying believer. Like, how do you deal with all that?
Oh, I haven't quite mastered it yet, if I'm just being totally honest. I try my best to remember that we know that it's okay to be angry, but we're not to sin in our anger and in our frustration. So I definitely do try to remember that, which is why I knew for myself I wasn't in a position where I could be out protesting because my heart posture was not correct at the time, and that could have easily backfired for me. But I I'm definitely still working on forgiveness and kind of learning what that looks like in a situation where I'm not necessarily directly impacted by what's happening, meaning I was not the person that was murdered or my family member was not the person that was murdered, but seeing that could have been me. So I still have to apply the principles of forgiveness in the same way. But I haven't figured it out yet. I'm still trying. I think every day gets a little bit easier. But that's why, like you said before, Jonathan, the whiplash is real when it's a constant back to back. It's almost as if as soon as you start to progress, boom, it happens again. And then you're still trying to catch up from the last time that it happened. So just kind of finding a balance and having conversations. I think that that's what's also helpful, because we acknowledge that we've experienced trauma, but we have to be open with one another and recognizing our needs as well. So if you need to go see someone that is professionally trained to help you, that is 100% okay to do. Just to ensure that you are emotionally whole. But also if it's from a spiritual perspective as well, if you need to go and, speak to your spiritual advisor, whomever that may be, just saying, okay, from a spiritual perspective, how do I respond to this trauma? I think that, all things involved need to happen, but it's always a work in progress.
Absolutely. And I think it's okay to own that and to be honest. To be frank with y'all, the people who haven't really been angry concern me. So I'm like, are you there? Like, knock, is anybody in there? But everybody deals with it differently. So, but I'll talk more about my feelings. I want somebody else to go ahead. I think Yesito, you were starting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that for me, it's kind of what Ebony just touched on, is like having those spiritual advisors. I kind of look at it the same as like, being a Black professional and in a space that there's not a lot of Black professionals in. You have, when you're kind of trying to figure out how to maneuver through certain things, you have those go-to mentors and people that will answer the phone when you got questions, or will text back, in short order when you sort of, when you have something going on. And same for my faith walk and going through all these things and trying to figure out certain things. Like, thankfully, when your dad's a pastor, you kind of get that inundated with you. But thankfully, I'll say people like Trevor, like I probably talk to Trevor about the same, almost as much, if not sometimes more, about faith and things that I'm going through, things that I'm thinking about, or things that I want to know, things I'm trying to learn more about. So like making sure that I have that, have those conversations is always something important to me, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be perfect, right? And you're not going to get every single thing right. And the good thing is that you got a long life, so you got a lot of time to ask many more questions, and they're not all going to be answered. So, but making sure you have somebody that kind of, like Ebony said before, like that advisor that kind of plays that role of, how should I be thinking about these things? Or somebody that can, if they don't know the answer, maybe they can kind of think critically with you on certain things. It's just been super important for me. And in both being a Black professional, but also just being a Black Christian.
I mean, like Ebony said, I'm still figuring it out. I pray all the time. I pray over the men around me, the women around me. I pray for literally everything. And sometimes like you question yourself because you're like, is praying enough? Like what, you start, like I said, you start questioning yourself, just thinking like, what more can I do? And I think that's the battle that I kind of face, like just what can I do, when sometimes like you do have to just seek advice or seek help or just have conversations with people that are your spiritual advisors or your mentors. I think that conversations help you to kind of cope with your emotions. And that's my thing, just taking care of mental health first, and making sure that you can, have yourself in check before you go out into the world and try to make some type of change or help others. Because you can't be like a broken record. Sometimes I feel like I'm just broken down into pieces. I can't do, you feel helpless. You feel extremely helpless. So I'll just say I'm figuring it out as well. Not to say it's in a bad place or anything like that, or I'm in a bad place, but you just feel very helpless when it's countless times that, you turn on the news. I don't even turn on the news anymore, but you hear about it or you see it and, you're out in it's just all over the place. And it's just like, is this life? Like, is this exactly what we have to deal with? Can we change it? What's going to happen here? So, I think just continuing to keep mental health in check first and make sure that these events do not drive us sour and drive us literally insane is step one. And then, seeking that help and that advice with others that may be in the same place. More than likely, a lot of people that may be therapists and maybe spiritual advisors or mentors are in that exact same place. And, check on your strong friends is what it is. Like, check on those strong people, because we really have to hold each other up and try to make sure these things don't happen again, try to change it. But that's generations of change that have to be uprooted, and it's just a lot. So I'm in the figuring it out phase, but I think that we're getting there.
Yeah. What about you, Joe? How do you balance it?
I think for me, and I want to kind of touch on something, Yesuto kind of ushered us into this current question. But, when you talk about, he struggled with, the idea of forgiving, the officers and what they did to George Floyd. And it reminded me of a message that Bishop preached. I believe it was this year. And it was all about loving your neighbor. It was all about loving your neighbor. And I'll say, we can throw out everybody's name right out. Out of all of these people, who have passed away, and all of the perpetrators. And I think one of the cops was, Derek Chavez, I believe. To your Dylan Roofs, to your George Zimmermans. I have never struggled with the idea of, do I have to forgive this person? And I never even thought about it. Because I didn't feel like, I was the one that needed to forgive them. It's, the families of people who have been, who they've taken these, this life, Trayvon Martin's parents, his siblings, the families. Those are the people who need to extend their forgiveness. But certainly, you struggle when somebody maybe doesn't respect your humanity. The idea that, the Lord does expect us to love that person, to love our neighbor, regardless of, how they view us. And, I'll just echo what everyone else has said. It's a process. It's certainly a process, and it's something that I'm still working on.
Yeah, I think, for me, it definitely has still been a process. Similar. I can echo everything all of you guys are saying. I think I felt this way. Everything you said, I felt that way. I thank God for the Holy Spirit, because it's the Holy Spirit who helps me. Because I can't do it in and of myself, because I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I'm tired and, and scared at the same time. And so not wanting to go through life always feeling like at any moment, something awful can happen. That's not the life God has called us to. He's called us to a life of abundance. He's called us to a life of confidence in him. And so remembering those things and speaking those things over myself has been really instrumental in this season. But I will say, like, maybe 2 weeks after all this happened, I really had a hard time. I was mad. I was really mad. And I think something that helped exacerbate my anger was a few weeks before that. I moved into a new apartment in Fort Mill, and my neighbors called the cops on me my first day because Yvonne and I were praying too loudly. For those watching, Yvonne's my fiance. And, that was frustrating. And that was infuriating. And that was scary. And so then George Floyd happens a couple weeks later. And it's like, dang, you can't pray while Black. You can't drive while Black. You can't breathe while Black. It's just a laundry list of things you can't do. Won't put you in potential jeopardy. And so you just get tired of that. You get tired of, again, like I said earlier, your very existence being a threat to people. Nevertheless, God is still good. And I have to remind myself that he's with me. He's with all of us. And, sometimes I have to be careful not to allow the anger to cloud what I know is the truth, that we are in a fallen world. We are in a sinful world. And this is the result of sin, ultimately. And that if we want to see racism eradicated, which I don't think it ever will be until the millennial reign of Christ, but if we actually want to see that maybe lessened, if we want to see it slacken a little bit, it's a heart issue, ultimately. I definitely believe in the power of protesting. I definitely believe in the power of standing up and vocalizing how you feel and making changes, institutional and systemic changes in the criminal justice system, in the education system, in corporate America. Absolutely. But I know at the end of the day, if anything's going to really, really change, it is going to come down to the heart. And that's why it's so incumbent that we remain ministers of the gospel, no matter where we are, because that's what we're called to be, ambassadors wherever we are. Now, I'm not saying there are going to be days where it's easy or where you're going to feel like doing that all the time. Lord knows after this, I didn't feel like ministering to nobody. I didn't have anything for you. White people kept asking me, how can I help? How can I help? What can I do? I'm like, I don't know. I got nothing for you. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure this out myself. I can't help you right now. But eventually it's kind of like, all right, got to kind of get up. Let's go. Let's figure this out. I think my biggest struggle came from newly woke white people. That's the one that got me the most because, again, I'm like, it's been 400 years. This has been around you the entire time. And I get it. You're in the majority. You don't get it. People don't talk to you about this. This is not your life experience. I understand that. But I did have a lot of questions, like Trayvon Martin happened. Oscar Grant happened. Amadou Diallo happened. Rodney King happened. There have been so many examples before people started putting all these things on iPhones. So really, what's the excuse? Just be honest. You didn't care. Like, just own it. And once we can own the truth, we can actually move on. And so that's been my struggle. It's like all these people are coming to this racial epiphany. I'm like, really though? Really? We've been talking about this forever. But God's working on me about them. I'm getting there. It's a process. It's a journey. So yeah. I guess that was my rant. So I know we're reaching almost an hour and 30 minutes, and I did not want to keep you all beyond 6:30, but I would like to kind of ask just maybe one more question or see if any of you have any questions that you want to kind of throw out there. But kind of in terms of moving forward as in your careers, especially, what do you see as kind of like the next step, or what changes do you think you're going to make? What modifications in your life might you make now that we're in kind of this quote unquote new era of racial understanding? I don't know how long it's going to last, to be honest, but that's just me. But now that we're here and you still have aspirations, you still have goals, even though the world around us is like on fire, like what do you think is next for you? What do you want to do? What things do you want to change? What goals do you want to achieve? Just kind of put it out there.
As I'm new in my profession, so I want to be the best attorney that I can possibly be, and I want to be able to stay true to myself. I want to be able to stay true to myself, with my upbringing, who God wants me to be, expects me to be, who my parents raised me to be, and also as a Black man. I know we kind of touched on, code switching and, knowing the right thing to say, and echoing what Tierra said. I mean, we certainly have to be tactful about the things that we do. And I think that's true for anyone. But I do strive, and I will be, who I am. I'm going to be Joe Terrius and everything that comes along with that. And of course, my culture and being a Black man comes along with Joe Terrius. And I'm proud of who I am and where I come from.
So I'm a current candidate for a master's in social work. I have a while before graduation, but I am super excited about this process. And I'm just looking forward to being able to provide mental health services for our people specifically that are affordable, or being able to provide them in situations where you bring no money to the table, but we acknowledge that you have a need, and we acknowledge that you need, that you've come to the place where you said, I want help, I just don't have the money for it. I would like to be able to provide people with the tools to assist with that. And specifically for Black people, because I think that we are a people who have experienced so much trauma, and we continuously tell ourselves, well, just keep pushing forward, just keep moving, just keep suppressing the things that you're feeling. And I think that truly is a silent killer. We have a lot of Black people who are walking around empty today, just solely because they have never actually faced the things that they've experienced. So I would like to be able to assist with that as much as I can. But I'm still, it's a work in progress, but that's definitely my passion for sure. But we'll see what that looks like in a few years.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just kind of like what Joe said before is, pretty much, striving to continuously be the best at what you're doing. So continuously learning more about the spaces that I work in, the different industries that I'm doing, like working with. I think it's just continually that process and making sure that I, keep people around me that I can ask questions and help me grow. I think one of the things that I've thought about a lot over the last few months, and particularly now that even with the Nick Cannon situation, he lost Wallen out, the importance of capital and the importance of being able to put capital to work. I think it's like, money is the root of all evil, right? But, it can be very, very helpful and influential to put, if used in the right way. And I think for me, it's just kind of understanding that some of the things that I think about now, probably, or the things I want to support now, those things probably I can't do those things now, but I could be in a place where I can help people, get capital or help, be somebody that can help along the way. But long term, putting myself in a place where I can fund the things that I want to fund the initiatives that I want to fund, be a part of wealth building and being a part of ownership and owning the work that you're doing, owning the work that you have. That's just extremely, extremely important. And then as we kind of think about being able to talk freely and just, ownership and, being able to, all your things be yours, is extremely important. That's the thing I've just been thinking about a lot. So for me, it's, hopefully being able to, be the best, whatever investor there is, like Joseph trying to, being the best lawyer that you can be. I think we're all trying to be the best, whatever we want to be. But yeah, I'm probably rambling at this point too, but just consistently trying to, from going forward, just like it was before now, it's just like, you got to keep on working and try to be the best you can be so that you can, be somebody that can help somebody be the best they can be later on. And that constant cycle of continuously working hard and, honing what you do and do it to the glory of God as well. Remember where you came from. So.
So for me, about the same as everyone said. Right now, I've been big on building Black businesses. And the reason that I'm in North Carolina at this very moment, I've been helping my brother build his business, and just make sure, we're starting within the family, just to take up that space in the economic field, spaces that we have not been able to occupy. And I think that my forte is really assisting my people, with, my brother, certain people haven't been in certain experiences or had certain experiences. So I want to be that voice for them and be able to help them and build them up as well. And like I said, just continue to build our businesses and own our own businesses, own everything that we create. Honestly, if you look at America, a lot of things have been created by Black people, but however, we do not have ownership of them. Reason being why Nick Cannon lost his show, why a lot of people have lost a lot of shows and lost whatever they have lost. It's ours. America is technically built on the backs of Black people. So right now, my thing is encouraging others to pursue entrepreneurship, to pursue higher levels in whatever industries they're in, and do that for myself as well. So, and also educating our people, because a lot of people do not have access to just the certain information, whether that be history, whether that be economic resources, whatever it is. I just want to be that voice for them and that pillar. So that's where I'm at with it. Yeah.
Awesome. For me, I kind of want to continue to advance in my career as long as God allows me, but to use my position and my privilege, because I think there is a privilege in being a Black man in corporate America, to provide access for those who don't have it. I've had the opportunity to do that in my current role. I want to continue to do that. I want to invest in people, especially people who look like us. And I want to continue to lift them up and amplify their voices. I want to turn my side business into a full-time business one day, and use that again as a mechanism to amplify our voices. Because I think access is really probably our biggest obstacle as a people. And access is so broad to capital, to education, to opportunity. So I want to do what I can to provide access, because I realize how blessed I am to be where I am. And God has shown me a lot of favor in the jobs I've worked in my career. And so I don't want to waste it. It's not just for me. So it's for us all. Thank you all. This was great. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. This was a good conversation.
It was fun. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad. And I hope that we can do this again sometime. Hopefully not on the heels of another slaying. Let's just do it to do it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Take care.
You too. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Top Talk. Be sure to visit our podcast and Facebook page for new episodes and to get caught up on some of the ones you may have missed. Be blessed.